This is work. Thanks a lot, Gail. I'm told I have lesser time than I had, so I'll try to be quick. Let's see if I can wrap it up within half an hour, but please bear with me if it goes beyond that a little bit. Yeah. So the topic that was given to me by the organizers was, is design thinking a magic wand to solve for product success? What do you guys think? Yes? Okay, let me ask you, how many of you, I'm sure all of you have heard about design thinking, but how many of you practice design thinking in your day-to-day work? Can I have show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, less than 20 it seems. Okay, and how many of you have heard about design thinking? Okay, still 50%, all right. Okay, so is design thinking a magic wand for product success? Actually, I'm also not very clear about it. But I have a view, and that view is yes. But there is a prerequisite for that. You need to internalize the core principles of design thinking, as is with any new concept, and you need to follow the rigor and the systematic approach that this method prescribes. And if you do that, yes, it can play magic. So design thinking, like any new concept, I think it's still new. It is kind of going through its trials and tribulations. It gets kind of a fair share of criticism, but there are a lot of lovers of it as well. So I thought it'll be good for all of us to have a shared understanding of what design thinking is. And in the end, I can ask this question again, and then let's see how many of you can have an answer for this. I come from a company called IdeaActio, and I believe very strongly, and all of us at IdeaActio, that if you take frills out, every business is a human business. And we work with a lot of companies, right from startups to public sector to large multinationals to companies in marine, industrial companies. And even in those companies which are not B2C, I think this human factor is very, very important. Today's session, I have 3 parts to it. As I said, before we kind of discuss more on this, whether design thinking can be a magic wand for product success, let's have a shared understanding of what is design thinking. First is, what is soul of design thinking? Then what is design? Because design thinking, the word comes from design, the industrial design profession as such. And what is the applied framework that we can use to kind of bring this method alive? Okay, people who use design thinking, would anybody like to share with me their understanding or definition? The less than 10 people who raised their hands. Yes, can I have?
Empathy at the core, putting the user in the middle. Mm-hmm. And then testing and learning, okay, essentially.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Anybody disagrees? Hey, is the post-lunch carbs or? All right. Generally, in morning sessions, people are more active. Okay, so let me talk about soul of design thinking. And when I use the word soul, I use it interchangeably with principles of design thinking, or the core of design thinking, or the mindset of design thinking. And I feel, as this gentleman just shared, design thinking can be defined, or it can be understood when you understand these 2 key principles. One is principle of empathy, and other is principle of co-design. So just imagine for a moment that you don't know these principles. And in normal day-to-day work, maybe here the audience is more enlightened, but when we work with companies in manufacturing or other sectors, whenever they are given a problem or they're faced with a problem, their first reaction is to jump into a solution. The way they do it is, okay, if this is the problem, can we get a few smart people near to us and think or brainstorm and come up with some kind of a solution? And those solutions, they may or may not work with the audience or the users they are trying to kind of offer solutions to. The reason is because those users were not involved at all. Very few smart, and it's not about being smart in the sense of like how intelligent you are or how many ideas you are able to generate. But if you don't keep user at the center when you are generating those ideas, for example, it doesn't work. But empathy by itself is also a passive term. I can empathize with you, but I still may not take any action. So that's why the co-design part becomes very important. And when I say co-design, it means co-thinking and co-making. So let's imagine a scenario again. Whenever you're presented with a new problem, it can be a product problem, it could be a company strategy problem, take a step back, reflect. Who is this problem for? And who's the user? What is the context of the user? What are the stakeholders in that problem? And try to think about this problem by immersing yourself into the world of the user. What are the pains? What are the needs, desires, or aspirations of those users? So your product brief still exists, but then you are thinking of the problem from the other perspective. And when you have those insights from the user side, then come back to your product again and try to give a new definition to the problem you had. So once you have defined the problem, which is by gaining empathy, then you start to co-think with the user. So don't just come up with, like, there is this term brainstorming. I think this is oft used and abused. So how can we think along with users and how we can then start to make solutions with the user through iterative and rapid prototyping? And I think in lean startup, like, people use this term MVP quite often, but that is a very much product-centric approach. And in the way design or design process differs a bit is because there is unflinching focus on the user. Now, it is easier said than done. Like, we were doing a project for a very large multinational, and we also suffered from the same thing. We were designing, it was a physical product design, and we were just designing something and going back to the client. And after some time, we got stuck. Like, we were not moving anywhere. And then one of our colleagues, he said, hey, why don't we just go out and test it with the user? Why don't we kind of take their feedback? So we also become people who are trying to prescribe and preach, so as to say, design thinking, victim of this. So that's why it is easier said than done that have the user-centered approach than it is to kind of apply. So to create any product, or for that matter, any solution, you can have three approaches. So, and three approaches are three perspectives. So one is business perspective. So that says, what can we do with our capabilities? Then there is product perspective, which says what else our product can do. But the perspective which we prescribe, or the way design thinking approach would say, is what would our users love? What is the value that we can create for the user? And it is not just about saying it, but by really experiencing what users are going through. And I think this was this picture, I got it from internet, but I think this is from Ford. Ford designers and engineers, when they had to design cars for pregnant women, they were asked to kind of go through this. So when you go through this, then you really experience that what could be the... I'll quickly show you a short video here, which illustrates this.
Dedication. Loyalty.
You guys are getting better at this. Yeah. Next week, buddy.
Friendship. The choices we make reveal the true nature of our character.
So what did you see here? Empathy, how?
What I saw was that there are a group of friends, and they all love basketball, and they all want to play basketball. And because one of their friends is differently abled, and they want to include him in the group, so they actually found out of this innovative way of how everybody can be involved and enjoy just basketball.
Yeah, it's a painful way. Yeah, but this way they were trying to empathize with that person by really feeling what this person goes through. So this is just to kind of highlight the point that you have to really experience what the user goes through if you're making a product. Not just think from your KPI perspective or just the product perspective, what my product can do, or not just engineering perspective, but how we can see it from the user perspective. And when we use this mindset, that we have to keep user at the center and then follow a certain method of co-design to design solution, then design thinking becomes quite agnostic. Agnostic to businesses, agnostic to functions, hierarchies. You can create new kind of strategy roadmaps. You can create new kind of organizational design, which we are, for example, we are doing with one travel company because travel companies are getting disrupted. We are working with Singapore's one of the largest companies to create a new kind of organization which kind of fits their future roadmap. Or it can also be designed to create new kind of products or services. And I also say that design thinking is like a salt. So it is not something, because try to understand design thinking not as the word design thinking, but these two principles that I talked about of empathy, to keep user at the by keeping user at the center, and co-design. Then this could be applied to any kind of thing that you're doing in company. Just imagine you're having a small meeting. Like, can we have these principles applied? Or you're creating some kind of a strategy. So I see it as a salt which kind of enhances whatever you're doing. So it is not and or. No, it's not or. It becomes and to whatever you're doing. And also I feel design thinking, these are not two terms now, design and thinking. It is becoming one term. And if you can historically see, I just took example from the tech world, these were two different words. Net was from network, and internet, inter was another word. And then same was with software. So I did a search, and still no entries found for the term design thinking when you see it as one. But I hope at some point in time, design thinking will find a dictionary meaning as well. So to us, it has already started to become. So I see design thinking not as break of design and thinking, but design thinking is one term. You found it. Maybe I'll try it again. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for pointing it out. I'll do immediately after the talk. Maybe there is one. All right. So this was, I think, the first part was about having a shared understanding that design thinking is about these two key principles, which I call soul of design thinking, empathy and co-design. Now let's talk about design, because design thinking as a term or as an approach or a mindset or a method, it has its kind of beginnings in the world of design. So, I was just reflecting, and these architects and interior designers, they talk about this thing, everything which is not nature, it is designed actually. And just imagine at some point in time when some of our ancestors or human species started and there was nothing. And everything they kind of made was out of this earth. So in a way, we were trying to solve some kind of problems. And in that sense, we were trying to design a situation which was preferred, which didn't exist. And I think Herbert Simon has a very good definition about design, that design is a course of action which changes existing situation into a preferred one. And this is what we were doing when we had to survive. Sorry, somebody said something? Or you're just talking? Okay. Sorry. So for example, first thing was to survive, to create a shelter. And we were designing some kind of shelters. And then when the shelter and the food equation was done with, then we were trying to solve another kind of problem, which was not a problem, but how to self-actualize ourselves. And then design became this art form. And as we went along, and with evolution, this design has found a midway between all the things that we see are designed here. They are not serving just our basic needs. I think there is a combination of the way the space is designed is a combination of utility, which is basic, but also aesthetics, which is more towards the higher end. So at some point in time, we started designing for commercial pursuits, not just for basic or just for self-actualization pursuits. And it is important to understand this because it tells something about how we use design. We as human species, we succeeded because we were able to use design in two ways, as skill and as craft. So no, as a mindset and as craft. So if you see this picture, like you can have skill to make something round, but you need imagination to do things with it. Yeah. So design, just the skill is not enough. And imagination, just imagination is not enough because you have to bring it to life. So this brings me to the second part of how I explain design thinking. The first was empathy and co-design. Design is a symbiosis. I'm using the term design and design thinking interchangeably. So design is a symbiosis of design as a skill and design as a mindset. And when we talk about design as a skill, it is about bringing some kind of idea alive. It is about creativity. It is in which we get trained for. Results of this are like physical space design. It could be a digital product design. But when we use design as a mindset, which is about imagination, then it becomes an approach. It can be applied to any kind of problem. But in both the cases, whether you use design as a skill or design as a mindset, the key is keeping user at the center. So still the first principle of empathy, which I talked about, we cannot do away with that. And I think designers, like great designers, even when the term design thinking wasn't there, like Charles Eames, there is a very famous quote by Charles Eames that design is subservient to human need. It does not answer to itself, it answers to human need. So who is it for becomes very important. And this brings me to the earlier slide which I showed you about like a business approach, product approach, and user-centered approach. So it is not that we don't need to have a business approach or a product-centric or engineering-centered approach when we are designing products, but the primacy has to be whatever we are doing, will it or is it emotionally engaging the user we are making it for? Are we creating some kind of value? So I think these are the terms. This way of thinking changes your perspective. This way of thinking changes the way you do things. Are we creating emotionally engaging stuff? Are we creating value for the user? And then, of course, you have to look at like functions and features and ease of use and so on and so forth, but again, by keeping user at the center. And I think good design is also about, I think we all know about DTRMs, like it is about taking things out and just, even at my home, there are like 3 or 4 remotes, you know, like I don't know what to do with them because I get confused sometimes. I like use one remote to do something else. And all these buttons, I think out of them, most of us use, if you're using a VCR, if we still use like play, pause, and sound. Same for TV. I don't know why. And if you look at, sometimes companies like Apple, they also go wrong because this was very good, but this was not usable. I'm not sure if any of you still have this remote. So Logitech got it right. Yeah. So design is about taking things out and keeping things simple. And there have been like companies like Brown and a lot of companies, they make products as simple as to use as possible. And at some point in time, not these days, in past 2 years, I used to think, why can't Apple make this? Why can't Apple make that? Because they were the first ones in a way in our conscious memory that they used this concept to make things like simple, but like, as I think Johnny I have has this interview on that, it is about, or I think Steve Jobs has this quote, design is not about how it looks, but kind of how it works. And companies like Muji, they have built business empires based on this concept. How do we muda? Like how do we take things out and create things of value? So this is very important in design as well. Design is a skill or design is a craft when I'm talking about. Be it in UX or UI or you're writing code, like how we can take things which are superfluous. The second part is design as imagination. So I talked about design 2 things. Yeah? One was skill and other was the mindset. So this growth mindset is very important. Have any of you heard about Carol Dweck's book, Growth Mindset? Mindset? Yeah, okay, you have. So I think you should read this book. This book is for everyone, actually. And Satya Nadella of Microsoft, he gave these 2 books when he took over as CEO. One was this growth mindset, and another was nonviolent communication. And you know, in last 4 years, he has created $250 billion of value for Microsoft alone, just based on these principles. So growth mindset is about, you know, like, I think we all do these kind of things in ideation, like people who have this fixed mindset, they talk about how it should be. But growth mindset is about how it could be. And it is very important to solve problems, because problems normally are ambiguous, they are about uncertainty, and if you have the should be attitude, you won't be able to solve in new ways. It is also about productive thinking. So reproductive thinking is that you produce an answer based on what you already know, from your knowledge experience. But productive thinking is whenever you're presented with a problem, how can we produce an answer which you don't produce through the things which you already know, but you try to explore other triggers and then try to think about answers. And growth mindset is also about developing yourself. So it is about positive and growth. So I think this is very important to be imaginative for design thinking as a skill and design thinking as a mindset part. And I'll share this illustration which has been made by my colleague Liz. She's a very good illustrator. In Singapore especially, but I realized this much in Asian context, and now we are in Germany, and then I see this thing there as well. So whenever we are growing up, when we are kids, I assume all of you were good in studies, that's why you entered this engineering or UX UI space. So when you're growing up and you want to do something, you ask your parent, can I do this? The answer normally you get is cannot. Yeah? And then when you go to school and you want to play, and the answer you get, no, you have to study. So cannot, again. And then when you go to college, you want to play guitar, you want to do this or that. I come from India, and there's so many, I've done engineering, and there are a lot of people I know from medical profession as well. In Indian engineering and medical colleges, you find phenomenal artists. They are very good singers, they're very good, a lot of Indian actors I know of, they were engineers, they were trained as engineers, but they ended up doing something else. Because the system says, cannot. Because you cannot be an actor, you cannot, now it is changing, but you cannot be an actor. So they enter engineering college because they have to please their parents or peers and so on and so forth. And with this mindset, when you come to workforce in Singapore, and DPM Thurman goes to New York and comes back and says everybody, or Filipio says, everybody has to be innovative. What is the answer you get? Cannot. Yeah. So this is the problem with innovation or how to adopt design thinking in true sense, because it is about imagination. And it is about the can mindset. Yeah? So this is the end of my second part. So first was the soul of design thinking, empathy and co-design. How much time I have taken so far? Okay, good. Okay, no questions. Okay. I give this example in there is an Indian movie. So there was a guy, he was a kind of a psycho. And he had very beautiful wife who had married her forcibly, and she goes for a birthday party, and he was supposed to go and pick her up from that birthday party, and he goes little earlier, and he says, okay, let's go. She says, no, party's still going on. He take out the gun, shoots, party's over. So it's no questions. No, it's not like that. So okay, that's this. So now is the third part of my talk. The first, I'll repeat again, empathy and co-design. Second is about design as a skill and a design as a mindset, which is about imagination. So now let's talk about a design thinking framework. So I'll start a little differently in this, not from design thinking, but why we are using design thinking. And I see design thinking method or mindset or whatever you call is used as a driver for innovation. Yeah? So I'll start by asking you something. What kills innovation? What kills new ideas? And when I say innovation, it is about new ways of doing things or new ideas. I'm asking a question. What kills innovation? Yes, sir.
Ego.
Ego, great. What else? Only the people in the first row say some things. Okay, let me define innovation in a way so that we have a shared understanding. So for me, innovation is creation of something new not to the whole world, but to your context. So you can cheat something as well. You see something working in New York or in Germany or in Africa, and you can bring it back to Singapore and see how it can be applied to your context. And there are good examples like M-Pesa and stuff like that, which is happening in Africa. Those kind of innovations can be brought to countries like Singapore, and China is already doing it. And which makes things better. So it is not about like innovation which is revolutionary. Even if you bring a small incremental change to what you're doing, that is also innovation. And eventually, it should create some value. So anything which is new, which makes things better, and which is of certain value. And if you use this definition, I think it becomes quite agnostic to where you can use it. So now with this, what kills innovation? What kills new ideas? Let's hear from the row 3. Would you like to say something?
Perhaps fear.
Fear?
Fear of being judged or having too many rules may kill innovation.
Yeah. So ego, fear of being judged, having too many rules. So can I ask you, ma'am?
I think convention.
Convention.
Yes.
Okay, tradition. This is how things are done. Okay, so I could have gone longer, but I think I have only 13 and a half minutes now. So I'll try to kind of, after having worked for over 10 years with different companies, we just felt that all the innovation killers, they somehow fall into these 3 categories. There could be more, but just for ease of understanding. So first innovation killer is myopia. It is lack of imagination, what I just said earlier. You need to be imaginative. So when you are not imaginative enough, you don't look beyond the line of actual sight. And a lot of solutions or a lot of ideas which may be possible solutions, they stay out. Second innovation killer is monkey mind. And in organizations, it's called like groupthink or expert think. If the boss says so, if the expert says so, yeah. And when one monkey jumps in the organization, yeah, and then the rest of the monkeys also jump. Yeah. And this happens because of a certain way of thinking. Yeah. So let me ask you first question before I talk about that more. You all are smart people. So what is 1/2 of 13? Shout. It's not a trick question. Sorry. It's not a trick question. Sorry? 6.5, very good. Anything else? Huh? 1, yes, very much. What else? Third, yeah, very good. What else? 3, yeah, because I didn't specify any condition. Yeah? I said this could also be an answer. This could also be an answer. Yeah. So why it happens that we are so hesitant in even telling other answers? Because this is the way how we have been trained to think, like it is basic psychology, that we have to make sense based on the education, knowledge that we have accumulated while we are growing up. So you know that when you're hungry, you don't eat this bottle, you go and pick up a cake there because I've been trained to think like that. So we think in patterns and we match patterns, and then that's how I think they are training AI as well. How do you match patterns, you know? So this kind of thinking by finding solutions through pattern matching is very good in our day-to-day work. Or it is also good when we are doing like if you are in, say, logistics company and you have to just like raise invoices. So there's no need for like any other kind of thinking. You can just think like that. But when you're creating new products, you're creating new services, when you're trying to solve problems for which solutions have not been found yet, then this kind of thinking does not work. Just imagine, oh, this is how we have been trained to think, and this is how we'll solve it. So of course, you won't be able to come up with anything else. So what I'm trying to tell with this case is that whenever you're presented with a problem, can we, see, theoretically, any problem or any point can have infinite perspectives. So whenever we are presented with a problem, can we look at this problem from different perspectives? And at least look from the user perspective to start with. So just to complete this, what are the other answers? What can be another answer? What is the answer? Yeah? What is another one? Okay, quiz is over. All right, so the point here I was trying to make about was pattern thinking and thinking from new perspectives to solve any kind of problem. So first, innovation killer, myopia. Second, monkey mind. And third is inertia. We have solutions, but we don't implement them for different reasons. And not just people. This plagues even large organizations as well. I'll share with you a very quick example. Do you remember this phone? This was a thick brick Ericsson phone, yeah? Very big one. So it solved the utility problem, but it didn't solve the usability problem. Because when this phone came, then I didn't have to go to my landline phone and stand there for half an hour to talk. I could take it along with. But why did they fail? They don't make mobile phones anymore. Not that at that time I think they must be best in technology at the time, but it was not about technology because they failed to see another trend which perhaps Nokia could. At the time, because of pagers, people were used to sharing like text messages as well. And if you see Ericsson's screen, it was made just for flashing the number, whereas this screen was, if you remember, I still love this phone and its navigation and the way it was designed. But they also failed because they looked at the utility and the usability part, but they also became, so it was not about, I think, I remember even going to, like 10 years ago to Philips, even before iPhone was launched, going to Philips lab in Toa Payoh, and you had like in the innovation center, they were like all the touch screen and stuff, everything which goes into an iPhone was there. So it was not about technology, it was not about wherewithal, they are like multi-billion-dollar companies. It was because they failed to look at something else, the weak signals in terms of how the user behavior was changing. And this company succeeded because now we were moving from desktops and using more and more laptops, and this market was ready for having a phone which helps you carry your emails along with you, and they also imploded. And I think I'm simplifying these examples. Of course, there were many other factors, but this is just to make a point that if you're not perceptive to the user behavior and the changes in user behavior, and if you stop to see those weak signals, then you don't do things which you should do. And then after that, BlackBerry also imploded, and then Apple came because there was another user behavior. You had like these digital cameras, but no way to share pictures. I remember I had like these thin, like those memory drives, which you have, like, and of doing nothing with those pictures, till the time Apple started kind of this paradigm shift in sharing. Of course, there was a lot about Apple as well. So if you become victim of your own boxes, so I use the term, if you've always thought the way you've always thought, you'll always get what you've always got. So 3 killers, myopia, monkey mind, and inertia. Now if the killers are so simple, like you don't need like a lot of intelligence to see that like we have to counter them. It's very easy, and this is where we have made this framework. We say like, to fight myopia, you have to learn to look at things differently. To fight monkey mind, you have to learn to think about things differently. And to fight inertia, you have to learn to make things differently. And there is a very simple framework. Look different. How can we examine problems from different perspectives? And how can we immerse ourselves into the world of user and try to understand their pains, aspirations, and needs? And not just user perspective, but also then look at like what are the technology trends and so on and so forth, what's available to solve those problems. And eventually, you cannot take your eye off the business needs. You have to make it viable as well in some way. Think different. You have to change negative scenarios into positive ones. Think with the user. So ideating with the user is very important. And once you have done that, you have to co-create with the user And as I said earlier, it's slightly different than MVP approach because it is not product-centric. You're still rapid prototyping and iterating, but with user at the center. So this framework is very simple. I won't share the remaining part of it, like in terms of tools and stuff. But if you just remember this, whenever you're presented with a problem, can we apply this to that problem? How can I look at this problem differently? And first is the user perspective, then technology and business. How can I think about solutions differently? How can I think along with the user? How we can bring those users to crowdsource the ideas? And finally, how do I make it differently through rapid prototyping and iteration, but keeping user at the center? So 3 things that I shared with you today, I'll end with that. Design thinking is, I talked about soul of design thinking, or the core of design thinking is about empathy, but empathy by itself could be passive. So the word co-design is very important. It is about co-thinking and co-making solutions with the user. Second is, what is design? It is about the skill, the craft of design, and also the imagination of design, as I gave you an example of that tire, like if you can make that wheel, but if you are not imaginative enough, you won't be able to do anything with it. And finally, the framework to apply is look, think, make. You need to have perspective, you need to co-create with the user, and you have to co-make with the user. So I hope with this, like, you have a little bit better understanding of design thinking, or at least shared understanding of design thinking, and how it can be applied and where it could be applied. So I would like to ask you this question. As I said in the beginning, I was not very clear whether design thinking is a magic wand. So now, if you see from this perspective, I would like to write you, I would like you to write your answers on these post-its. I think you'll get these post-its. Can we please give post-its to these people? A very quick one, and you just stick it there. And if 1 or 2 people would like to share, we can have a sharing. Otherwise, I think we'll end at that because we are over time already.
Yeah, we can manage time in this way. That, after you write this, whoever writes yes can stick to this wall. And after this, you can put, the no can put it to that wall, those glasses. And then you can go and have coffee. And then when you come back, we'll share the results. Probably that way.
Yeah, that's good. So maybe yes, please write on, so is design thinking a magic wand for product success? If you feel yes, from whatever I've shared, write on this and why. And if not, then why? Yeah. So please use these post-its and write it on the wall, and then please have tea. Thanks. Raimo, you see the guy with the beard? We are writing a blog and a book together on the same topic of what kills innovation. So whenever you get time, it's not launched yet, it's still beta. There are not many articles at the moment, but please try to kind of have a look at this, what kills innovation. Thanks.
So here's a little gift for you.
Thank you so much.
SES Society, and hope you also enjoyed being here. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Really bubbled up were that we actually empathize with users, so we actually get to know that they are real people with real problems. And that is how we actually come up with solutions. The other one is mindset actually drives action. So if you have a problem-solving mindset and if you really empathize with the user, then you would actually drive actions and try to solve those problems. The other one is that it mitigates risk. So you actually, when you're co-building or co-designing with the users, you're actually reducing risk for your product. So you're actually mitigating risk early on into your design process rather than delivering something and then realizing, oh shit, it doesn't work. The other one is user expectations. So you actually understand that what the user expects out of the service or the product that you're designing. And another one is do the right thing. So I think somebody wrote it down that probably design thinking is the right way to go, and it would be beneficial. So one of the themes that bubbled up for maybe design thinking doesn't work that well is that if it is not agile, it can't be design thinking.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's the end of my session. So we'll invite Kuldeep and the next speaker. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you, Nav.
Thanks.